Okay, I want to answer a question, and I'm going to do it by um, giving you a verse of scripture. Okay, giving you a verse of scripture, and it's one that it's kind of interesting because it's one that um, that this verse, this situation here, should we pay for slavery sins, or better, should we? Could you hear people say, should we pay for? Should this generation, now usually people who are anti reparations. Let me say this first. Those that are anti reparations, okay, will say this. And the notion is this. They don't want to pay reparations. They do not feel like we should pay reparations. So their biggest argument, one of the biggest arguments, I should say, one of the biggest arguments is, why should we pay for the past sins? Okay? So, why should you take money out of my pocket and pay for someone that to pay for someone else's sin, right? I mean, is that logical? Should I be made to pay for that? Now, I want to address that, and I'm going to give you a verse that I rarely hear people talk about, but I'm kind of go back, because one of the things, it is the callousness to me in which people that people are answering it. The callousness of of people who don't want to the callousness to me of people who don't want to or feel that black people don't owe reparations. Now, I'm not going to get into the reparations argument, but let me just say this. First and foremost, there's a legal reason why, okay? There's a legal reason why we should pay reparations. Now, the who is I think is a valid point. Who gets reparations today? However, let's first start with the fact that from a legal perspective, reparations are owed. From a moral perspective, reparations are owed. For a godly reasons, reparations are owed. So let me first talk about the legal reasons. One, think about this. There are certain crimes that there is no statutes of limitations on. Okay? That there is no statutes of limitations on. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay. And then there is no statutes of limitations. The other thing. Okay, that's the first thing. The other thing is, when I say a moral, so if something was done wrong, then you ask the question, was it ever made right? So you have the question, in 1865, was slavery, the crime, the atrocities, the sin of slavery, was it ever made right? Did this nation ever atone for it? Did this nation ever make it right? Then I'm going to ask you, how? How was it made right? The answer to that is it wasn't made right. And remember, we had 100 years of Jim Crow after slavery. Then you have the biblical response that I'm going to give you. Does God require this? Does God say that these things should happen? Does God say that a past generation? Because remember, one argument that I see with people is they say, well, why should I pay for my ancestors' sins? Right? That's kind of one of the arguments. Why should I pay, or why should I be made to pay for the past generation's sins? Now, again, somewhat answer that. They were never, first of all, in 1865, ask yourself, after 240 years of slavery, what was done? What was done to help the newly freed slaves acclimate to the new world, the new freedom? But what was done? The mentality, the trauma, okay? What was done? And ask yourself, okay, on that level. Now, I even hear Christians ask the same thing. Why should we pay? Is it wrong for me to take money? First of all, that's a ludicrous kind of statement right here, because no one is showing up at your door, right? The IRS is not contacting your employers and saying, hey, make sure that there is a slavery reparations deductions out of your payroll check. Like with anything, of course, it would come out of the government. And by the way, remember, it was also the government that wronged African slaves, and then African citizens, black citizens. So the government owes that. Besides the fact that there are people today who have benefited from the institution of slavery. For example, Senator Mitch McConnell, his family owned slaves. I believe on both sides of his father and his mother owned slaves. There's been colleges, there have been certain banks, institutions, all who own slaves, and even churches. Yes, there are even churches that have benefited from slavery. In fact, one church sold off its slave members to pay the pastor's salary. But I want to show you a verse of scripture just to kind of sum this up. I want to show you a verse of scripture. Where am I going to go here? Because this is the one verse of scripture that no one, and again, this is from God's perspective. Okay, this is from God's perspective. So let me I gotta share my screen here, and then let's go down to this. All right, here we go. All right. This is found in 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 21. 2 Samuel chapter 21. And David, now let's let it read here. Verse 1 says, during David's reign, There was a famine for 3 successive years. So David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered, "It is because of the blood shed by Saul and his family when he killed the Gibeonites." Now, verse 2, the Gibeonites were not Israelites, but rather a remnant from the Amorites. And the Israelites had taken an oath concerning them, but Saul had tried to kill them in his zeal for the Israelites and Judah. So David summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. He asked the Gibeonites, "What shall I do for you? How can I make atonement so that you will bring a blessing on the Lord's inheritance?" Now the story will go on and say that he's going to take 7 of Saul's descendants and hand them over, and then they will be executed. But here's what I want to bring out here. Notice God himself was holding David's generation accountable for something Saul had done. Now think about that. Think about that. In other words, there was this famine that for going on for 3 years, and the reason why, he said, is because of what Saul did. In other words, in order to make it right, to stop this famine first and foremost, and then to make it right, he had to say, okay, you know what? Something that Saul did that was hideous, he had to atone for that. And that's my point here. That when people say, why should I pay for the past? Well, if the past has not ever been made right, then yes, the government, the people can be held responsible for that. I just wanted to share that thought, guys. I just wanted to share that thought, that there is a biblical reason why, okay? A biblical reason why reparations should be paid for. All right, guys, I'm going to end with that. Hope you guys have a nice night. I'll talk to you later. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I also have another channel, the Bible Perspective, but also I'm going to start posting videos and doing these kind of live chats and studies on this video. So like and subscribe, share these videos, hit the I'm trying to think I think the subscribe button should come up, but anyway, I don't see it here. But by all means, hit that subscribe button, and look, I'll see you guys next time. All right, thanks for watching.